First of all, thanks so much, Joseph, for accepting this interview for our online station here based in Ecuador. I want to start asking you, I was so impressed by your book with so much information and so much research that you've done with your partner who's the co-author of the book, David Steinmetz, that I just, was wondering how did you come around to assemble such amazing research of information to make historic sense of the Yugas?
Well, first, let me thank you for having me on your program, and for your compliments about the book. My sort of journey with the book started a very long time ago. I first encountered the concept of the Yuga cycle almost 40 years ago. And in that time, I had been fascinated by it and had sort of kept an eye on trends and research and ancient anomalies and current trends that fit this cyclic sort of footprint of the Yugas. So when I actually began writing the book, in a sense, I already had been researching it for well over 30 years and had accumulated a great deal of material. I actually had more trouble deciding what to put in and left out so much that was more difficult than actually assembling the information itself. There's a tremendous amount of corroboration for the notion of a cyclic development of civilization and human consciousness.
Yeah, and well, I know you studied in Colorado and as well as in Berkeley, Eastern and Western civilizations that I'm sure gave you so much information. But I was wondering, in regards to your studies, since it seems that when we go to college or university, they feed us more like the traditional framework of thought of the history that we have been taught that things are. When you studied these things at the university, did you already come in with a different idea of the possibilities of these cycles?
Not while I was studying at University of Colorado, but when I was at UC Berkeley, that was actually when I encountered the concept of the Yugas for the first time, and so I began to sort of view everything I was learning through the lens of the Yugas. But you're definitely correct that the mainstream current view of prehistory, history, and the last couple of thousand years very much conforms to what's generally referred to as a Darwinian evolutionary view, that the farther back you go in time, the more primitive the civilization, the more ignorant the populace. And that is a really, really strong thought form that pretty much informs all of mainstream thinking. The interesting thing is that they make such an effort to make it conform that even when facts such as the incredible information embedded in the Vedas or the amazing precision, accuracy in the construction of the Great Pyramid, or other things that they don't really understand, like the use of life force healing and what we now today call holistic medicine, long, long ago, when confronted with those things, they tend to just minimize their meaning, minimize their impact, and just kind of go on with this conviction of a linear progression of development from the distant past to the present. But as I just indicated, there's actually a lot to refute that very straightforward approach to the past. The basic idea of the Yugas is that there is a outside force that raises consciousness as we get closer to it, and the location of this source of energy that raises our consciousness is a whole subject unto itself. But the impression that Sri Yukteswar gives, the man who put forward the concept of the Yugas that I like, in which there's a 24,000-year cycle, he implies that this source of upliftment that's coming to us is some distance away, and we get closer to it and farther from it in a cycle. And as we get closer to it, the consciousness of mankind is awakened, quickened. We become more intelligent. We become more aware of our own higher potentials. And then as we move farther away from it, the reverse happens, that the consciousness of mankind diminishes. The last low point of this cycle occurred, again according to Sri Yukteswar's model of the Yugas, in 500 AD. And the last high point of the cycle occurred in 11,500 BC. So there's a 12,000-year gap between the high point and the low point. And then since 500 AD, we've been on the upswing again, so that the general level of awareness and consciousness on Earth is in its awakening phase. So if we look back to 500 AD to the present, it's according to the Yugas, we would definitely agree with sort of the mainstream view of history, which is that things are improving. That the exploration of science that is happening now is definitely far superior to the cruder awareness of the physical world that existed in 500 AD.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go back before 500 AD, that's where the mainstream view and the view of the Yugas begins to widen apart from each other. If you look back to, say, 700 BC, 1000 BC, according to mainstream view of things, that time should be even more primitive than 500 AD. 1,500 years earlier, they knew less, etc. But if you take an open-eyed look at the artifacts from the time around 1000 BC, they knew amazing things. You can see it in particular in some of the healing systems that existed, and existed even before 1000 BC. What we now sort of in shorthand refer to as traditional Chinese medicine.
Mm-hmm.
It existed at that time. Acupuncture, needles have been found that are dated at 3000 BC.
Mm-hmm.
So they practiced an extremely sophisticated form of medicine long before Western medicine, as we know it today, even sort of got on its feet to get going. the Egyptians had an extremely sophisticated healing system. They had records that have been found in Egypt, papyruses, that detail an amazing knowledge of anatomy, how the body functioned on a physical level. They understood things like the meningeal fluids in the brain and spinal cord. They understood about trauma. They had sort of herbal, antibacterial remedies. And you also see this in Ayurveda. Ayurveda is similarly old. It dates back to pre-700 BC and perhaps even earlier than 3000 BC. And it too has an amazing sort of catalog of anatomical knowledge and remedies. But the difference between Western medicine, fundamental as it exists today, in the predominant sort of expression of Western medicine, and those ancient systems, is that those ancient systems also included a knowledge of life force that, woven in with suggesting a herbal poultice and a acupuncture treatment, is also a affirmation or a prayer or a chant or a method of stimulating a person's life force to help with the healing that has more to do with energy levels, energy realms, than it does with physical. And of course they're interconnected. That's why we say it's all holistic. But that's very sophisticated, very advanced knowledge, which I think we as a civilization, worldwide civilization, are just beginning to rediscover. We're coming back into that part of the upward cycle, the upward arc, that matches, in a sense, the timing of that knowledge that existed in the descending arc. So what the traditional mainstream historians and archaeologists tend to do with this knowledge is say, oh, well, it was primitive and crude, and all that prayer and affirmation and life force stuff is just superstition. It doesn't really work. We know now with our clear-eyed knowledge of reality based on scientific proof that was all just a bunch of hooey for the most part, and that they got lucky with a few things like herbal poultices that happen to have certain medicinal properties to them.
Please go ahead.
Mainstream history is having a harder and harder time sweeping these anomalies under the rug. And I can't predict when, but I do predict that there will be a kind of overturning at some point in time of this strictly linear view of history, just because the sheer number of anomalous artifacts and anomalous knowledge that existed in that distant part of the past is just going to force them to rethink.
Definitely. Now, according to your writings, and obviously based on Sri Yukteswar, the Holy Science book, and what he taught to Paramahansa Yogananda, we understand there are 4 eras or 4 cycles: Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. And what I found quite interesting is that I don't know if you also maybe ponder about this, but why is the Kali Yuga shorter than the other ages or the other eras, and why is the Satya Yuga much larger in span from the other ones? Is there any way we could understand why this works that way?
It's a very interesting question, and it's one that I have, in fact, pondered a lot. I don't really have a really good, simple answer to the question. I think it has to do with how we receive this outside influence from a great distance. And I think it also has to do with the innate truth that our consciousness as spiritual beings is much more in tune with that higher age than it is with the lower age. That we are that, and that we're, in a sense, mankind is destined to rediscover that just simply because we are spiritual beings. We have spiritual potentials, and they will come out. But both of those answers are admittedly kind of vague. I don't really have a good solid answer for why it is longer. Even though it means nothing specifically to me at this moment, or to you at this moment, because we are in the cycle where we are, it does sort of make me feel good that the cycle is mostly higher consciousnness.
Now, one thing that also I really enjoyed, and something that really stuck with me when I was reading the book, is this comparison of the ages with this bull, and that in the Satya Yuga there's the bull walking in its 4 feet, and the Treta Yuga with 3 feet, and the Dwapara Yuga with 2 feet, and the Kali Yuga with 1 foot, but one leg. I mean, I should say legs. I'm sorry. And what I was wondering, when I was, like we are in ascending Dwapara Yuga right now, and we are starting to enter the age of energy, or we have entered the age of energy, and we're starting to understand greater depths of the use of energy. And what I was also wondering all this time is that if the collective consciousness of humanity is waking up to this because there's any cosmic rays, cosmic influence that is sending us the possibility, is sending us the energy for us to understand in a better way all these processes, because when we were in the Kali Yuga, we were completely disconnected from our essential nature, essential truth. And as we go back to the ascending cycle in the Dwapara Yuga, we are starting to reconnect. And, there's so much going on around the world of positive thinking and the power of thought. But still, I feel that that is surfacing, but we are not completely connected to the power of thought yet, because the energy that helps us really, really grab the importance of thought over energy and over matter, it's not there yet for us to really grasp. Do these movements of consciousness through the eras have to do completely with the kind of energy that falls onto our planet, our solar system?
Excellent question, and it's. I think it goes to the heart of what the Yugas are really about. First, let me say, for the benefit of our listeners, that in Sri Yukteswar's conception of the Yugas, the preponderance of mankind, the majority of mankind, tends to be in a similar awareness during these yugas. But there are always people in these various yugas, as you mentioned, Kali Yuga being the lowest, and Dwapara and Treta and Satya. There are always people in those eras that have a greater awareness and a lesser awareness than sort of this middle ground of people. And the most important thing to understand from that is that in any age, by using the gift of spiritual teachings and the tools of spiritual teachings, such as meditation and affirmation and pranayama we can rise above the average level of consciousness. So there's always the possibility that as an individual, we can achieve a higher level of consciousness than the one we currently enjoy, and we can, ascend to this point of having this deep attunement to thought and direct attunement to spirit that are kind of the hallmarks of the higher ages, the hallmarks of Treta and of Satya Yuga. But I think the very interesting question that you just asked there was, why does this energy coming from outside of us affect us? I mean, in a sense, why does it affect us at all? How does it affect us? And I think what it is that that energy is raising the frequency of our entire planet.
Mm-hmm.
So frequency in an electromagnetic sense is that there's a shorter and shorter wavelengths. Higher energies like gamma radiation have very, very tiny wavelengths, and that allows them to carry tremendous amounts of energy. And low wavelengths like radio waves, which are really, really, really low frequency, vast distances, can be up to miles between the wave peaks, doesn't carry as much energy. So I think this outside influence is raising the frequency of all matter on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're born into a body that is vibrating at a higher frequency, your nervous system is vibrating at that higher frequency. And that allows you to naturally tune into an awareness at that same frequency. Yogananda said that thoughts are universally, not individually rooted.
Mm-hmm.
And that we tune into thoughts, we draw them into our being, rather like a radio set, that we turn the dial to a particular wavelength, and then we get a particular station. So the radio sets, the bodies of people who existed in Kali Yuga, in the lower age of Kali Yuga, existed at a lower frequency, and they literally did not have the right radio sets to tune into more subtle ideas, more subtle awareness that exists now in our modern Dwapara Yuga. Now, what a lot of spiritual practices are about is refining the body, cleansing the body, and refining the nervous system, and bringing your own body, regardless of what yuga you're in, bringing your own body up to higher and higher frequencies. So I think that that general massive influence that affects all of the earth and therefore all of mankind tends to vibrate at a certain frequency, and that will tend to make everyone who is tuning into that, living at that frequency level, tune into the same kind of ideas, the same kind of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And then as that frequency level keeps on increasing, we tune into yet more subtle, yet more subtle, yet more subtle awareness. So we can do it for ourselves by meditating, by practicing pranayama, by affirmation, by a whole host of other spiritual tools that we're blessed to have. Or, as is the case with most people who are relatively uninterested or completely uninterested in using spiritual tools. You just kind of go along with the flow of ideas that come because you're at that level of consciousness.
Now, if there's this interaction between the cosmos and the solar system and basically our planet that impacts the human consciousness and whatever happens there, wouldn't we be more like puppets of a cosmic game? Like we're responding to an energy. We don't know. We believe we're in charge. We believe we are in control of everything, but we are actually not. We're responding to this interaction of energy. So we would be more of like puppets of this cosmic game. And so I was wondering if you sort of have this idea sort of similar to what I'm saying, and if that is so, if we are like string puppets from this cosmic game, what decides who is open to receive the tuning into the spiritual teachings and who is not? Because we see that duality all the time in the planet.
Well, you're asking a profound and important and big question that goes well beyond the Yugas per se, and that is, why are people so differently interested? Why are some people drawn to sort of dark and negative experience, others to positive things? Why are people some enormously talented? Why are some born in poverty and ill health? And I believe that the best way, the deepest way to understand it is through an appreciation of the idea of karma and reincarnation. That we're all in a school, but the school doesn't happen, all the teaching, all the learning doesn't happen just in one lifetime. That we're all making our way back to the awareness of our oneness with God.
Mm-hmm.
And that we learn it all in unique ways, unique to each individual, but in similar ways in a sort of a larger view of things, that we have to overcome the conviction, the hypnosis that we are just bodies, and that we may spend hundreds, thousands of incarnations learning the lessons to convince ourselves that we are more than just bodies,
mm-hmm.
more than just physical bodies. And we're also looking for happiness, not just knowledge. We're looking for lasting, enduring, profound joy, because on a deeper than conscious level, we know that that is our birthright, and we will seek it, however poorly, we will nonetheless seek it always. And those forces of seeking greater awareness and seeking joy sort of impel us to have all these experiences in various incarnations. And gradually, we do learn. We
mm-hmm.
do wake up. But we don't all wake up at the same time. Every soul has a choice. Every soul is unique in the sense that they can choose to grow into that expanded, joyful, blissful reuniting with God as fast or as slow as they want.
So maybe that's why Satya Yuga is longer in time span, because we are. It's our innate nature to be connected to the God source and to be aligned with the absolute truth. And it seems that in Satya Yuga, that's when it really happens. That we are bound, we are connected to the essential truth of our nature, and we want to stay there. But then cycles go around like the seasons, and we have to move around. Maybe, I don't know the reason, but it would seem intuitively that it's because then we you know how humans are. We get so comfortable in one place that we start not valuing what it is. And so maybe that's why we have to go to the other side. We live in a dual world, and I don't know if there's something beyond dualism. I'm sure there is, but at least from the Yuga cycles and the way we have the ascending and the descending and the polarities, this is based on a polarity-based kind of world where we are based. And so,
according to Yogananda, and not just Yogananda, but it's sort of a fundamental teaching of Eastern religions, is that this is a dualistic universe, and that we're going to be subject to the laws of cause and effect and the opposites that exist in a dualistic world, but that the ultimate reunion with God is overcoming duality, so that we don't actually, even though we might exist in a body in a universe that is dualistic, our consciousness has become unaffected by that dualism, and that's the real overcoming, and that we move beyond this physical universe when we've overcome its duality that has been sort of driving us in all these incarnations up until the point when we learn the ultimate lessons. Then we graduate to the astral regions and the causal regions that lie beyond this physical world. I also wanted to mention that a lot of people, I have to disappoint a lot of people, because they put reincarnation together with the Yugas, and they say, that's great, I can just kind of hang in there, and in a few thousand years I'm going to be incarnating in such a Yuga, and it's going to be great. But I have to disappoint people, because according to again, to the scriptures, to the many spiritual teachers, we incarnate in a realm that has the consciousness in which we need to learn our own lessons. So we may not be ready for the lessons of Satya Yuga, and we may incarnate.
Give me a second, I'm gonna retry the phone call again. I don't know what disconnected, so I'm gonna call him through a landline, and I'm gonna put you on hold here with a little song until I can get him on the phone. Oh guys, I missed you just when you were saying something so important, so we're going to continue now, okay? I'm sorry for that. Okay, we're back with Joseph on the phone now, and we missed what we were talking about, but it was something about how you were talking about reincarnation, and how people are going to be deceived because they were not going to be able to reincarnate in Satya Yuga necessarily, and you were explaining why. Can you just continue on that, please?
All right. Well, as I was saying, I often have to disappoint people who put together the idea of reincarnation with the Yuga cycle and conclude that they're just going to kind of ride this cycle upward to Satya Yuga, where they will incarnate in this higher age and have this wonderful, pure relationship with spirit. But according to the laws of karma and from what the spiritual masters tell us, we only incarnate in areas of consciousness, times of consciousness, if you will, maybe on this planet, maybe on another, where the consciousness is such that we can learn the lessons we need to learn. So if we're still trying to grapple with the lessons of Dwapara Yuga, the lessons of learning to harness our own life force and control it, and to move through sort of the very ego-focused motivations of Dwapara Yuga, then that's where we're going to reincarnate. And we're not going to reincarnate in Satya Yuga until those are the lessons that we're needing to learn.
So, one thing that is really interesting for me is to hear people say nowadays that, the concept that everybody's saying we're all one, and it's flowing around the internet, and everybody's talking about being one and we are all one. But, it's flowing. People are aware in their minds that this is true at some level, but we don't live like that. What would require us to not just know this in some part of our brains or some part of ourselves, but actually start living in the real concept of oneness?
Well, let me first say that I am really thrilled that the notion that we have oneness to achieve is great. That it's out in the world's consciousness, that this is a possibility. That even just by itself is a tremendous goal. Yogananda, in response to one of his disciples kind of lamenting his lack of spiritual progress, said, "Oh, please remember that it takes very, very, very good karma to even want to know God. That it indicates that you've come a long way in your journey, and you've learned a lot of lessons to get to the point where you think oneness is the goal." Now, as you said, even with that, it is naive to think that just saying it or acknowledging the higher truth of it is all you need to do. That if you, you've probably had conversations with people who say, well, it's all perfect because it's all one. And there's a sense that coming through that illogic is that it sort of therefore doesn't really matter what I do or how I live because I'm one.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, is positive in the sense that at least you're thinking you're one, but there is definitely a need to really expand into that potential that doesn't come just with the mental acknowledgement. So in terms of what that progress looks like, it mirrors the Yugas. That's what I find perhaps most fascinating about the Yugas, is that we first start with material body consciousness, which is what Kali Yuga is about. And then we begin to learn and experience and really feel that we are more than just a physical body, that we have a body of life force, an energy body that informs and influences our physical body, that sustains our physical body. So practices like pranayama, which literally means life force control, are to help us learn to be attuned to that awareness. So we're given a lot of tools to help us awaken, feel, experience, and then eventually control our life force by, the spiritual teachers. And that, in a sense, is what our entire age is beginning to awaken to. Now, there's outward energy and there's inward energy. And the inward energy is what we need to learn about in order to advance. Treta Yuga, the next yuga ahead of us, is a time when mankind as a whole will have attunement to the power of thought. So life force control, the ability to feel and move and control the life force, to heal yourself, is a stepping stone to being able to be aware of and control your thoughts. And it's a higher order of control that most people in our day and age, like nearly absolutely everyone, do not have. There are few rare beings who can, with the power of their mind, change reality.
Mm-hmm. Like something like what Sai Baba did, and he was able to materialize things. It's because he was totally connected to other realms of consciousness, way beyond the capacity of the average person.
Correct, exactly. But it's all part of everyone's own spiritual potential. We just haven't realized it yet. We haven't learned the lessons, gained the control of those kind of forces that the masters have. And then the final level, the Satya Yuga equivalent for us as individuals, is pure awareness of spirit, that there is no longer a separate identity. We tend to think of ourselves as part of God, but for all intents and purposes, we live and think and act as if we were separate from that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In Satya Yuga, that consciousness becomes so real and pervasive that most people realize they are, in fact, one spark in the great light of the divine, and that the sense of ego consciousness, which is the last thing to go, is the final lesson learned in Satya Yuga. So we all go through that same process of learning, and as you said, we manifest abilities that are that match the level of awareness we have. So when somebody says they are one with God and that it's all one, it's true fundamentally, but it's not a realized state until you can actually manifest those kinds of powers. Not that manifesting the powers is the goal, but until those abilities become real, then you're just affirming your reality. You're not experiencing it.
So we can actually achieve those levels of we can call it power of maybe awareness by working on ourselves and because sometimes I feel that it's the tuning in that you mentioned as the radio. How can people tune into a radio they don't know it exists? So, in that sense, I would think that somehow we need to start working on ourselves to the point that we become aware that there's other radios that we can tune in, and finally they realize that we can change the direction of our attention, but we need to start working on ourselves. That doesn't come for free.
No, it doesn't come for free. But in terms of not knowing there are other radios stations to tune into, we are blessed with the fact that spiritual teachers come to the earth, even though they are beyond needing to incarnate here anymore to learn their lessons, but they do incarnate in order to tell us about these higher states of awareness that we can tune into. So while we don't know them experientially, we are blessed to be told about them all the time if we read the lives of saints and the great scriptures of all the religions.
Mm-hmm. No,
we have the knowledge, we have the information if we choose to pursue it. But that choice to pursue it, as you say, that's the key. We do have to work. I hate to use the word work because it scares people off. Often, it sounds hard and difficult.
Mm-hmm.
The basic thing about using the spiritual tools like pranayama and meditation is that you feel better, you feel energized, you feel expanded, you feel creative, because what you're really doing when you apply yourself, again, I'm going to avoid that word work, but when you apply yourself in a very deliberate fashion to try to experience these higher state awareness, you succeed. And when you succeed, it's wonderful. You just feel better. There's no doubt when you have an experience in meditation, a higher experience in meditation. There's no doubt that it is higher because you just feel greater calmness, you feel greater joy, you come out of the experience with a unforced willingness to be more compassionate and serviceful and helpful. The better you emerges naturally.
Now, have you found...
While it's work, while it requires focus, the end result is you become much more. You become greater. The work becomes, in a sense, less because it's just so alluringly wonderful to live that way.
Now, have you maybe encountered on the process of this tuning in or growing into this higher awareness that you need to face the dark side, the dark powers that are around inside of you and that also intervene outside for things not to flow in the direction that you would like?
The best way to get rid of the darkness is to turn on the light.
Mm-hmm.
So, number one, importance. If you're going to deal with some of your own dark issues, then let that be 1% of what you do, and let the other 99% be tuning into the light. Because when you tune into the light, so much of what you think of as, major issues in your life can essentially dissolve. That old hurts and wounds and pains from your upbringing, from your current relationships, bad luck, difficult karma, that can seem to be just a huge weight, will seem so much lighter, so much easier to bear, so much less important to you when you enter into these higher levels of consciousness, that they just don't impinge on you anywhere near as much.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I was wondering regarding the Yugas, in what way do they relate to the passing of ages of the constellations? Like in the Western world, we talk about the Piscean age, the Aquarian age, and so forth, that they have, according to what is being said, somewhere between 2,000 to 2,400 years each era. In what way do the Yugas fit with these ages of the different constellations?
I've asked myself that same question, and I've discussed it with many people who are, fans of the Yuga cycle. And I've pretty much come to the conclusion that no one sign, and therefore an age like the age of Aquarius or the age of Leo or the age of Libra, that none of these signs are inherently higher or lower than any other.
Mm-hmm.
And that we go through these different astrological ages because we are, the Earth is processing, that we are, it's a complicated process, the precession, and I don't want to digress on it too much, but basically it has to do with the fact that if you looked to the horizon every day for 24,000 years, and you looked at exactly the same point, a different star will rise at that point over time, gradually. And then in 24 to 26,000 years, that initial star you first looked at will rise again. So that's the notion of the precession, is that we, in relation to the sky around us, in relation to the stars around us, we are sort of gradually turning. Now, why we're turning can be because of a wobble of the Earth, or, as the Yugas suggest, our entire solar system is moving in a cycle that takes 24,000 years, moving in a circle that takes 24,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it tends to open us to the qualitative influences of these different segments of the sky. But the main thing that's happening is that we're getting closer to and further from this center of higher consciousness, this influence of higher consciousness that is raising the vibration of the Earth and all its inhabitants. So they both exist, but the different ages are far less important in the scheme of things.
But is there any difference, like between the ascending the ascending cycle and the descending cycle, in terms of I don't know, what would that main differences be between ascending and descending? I mean, it has to happen because it's a circular movement, but is there any major differences between one and the other?
Well, no, the interesting thing I think about the way Sri Yukteswar describes the Yuga cycle is that we go through the same ages going up as we go through going down. So in other words, we've been recently, the Earth has recently been in Kali Yuga, and now we're in Dwapara, and we will then go into Treta and into Satya. But then we go into sort of a second period of Satya, when we begin the descending arc, and then we go through Treta Yuga, back through Dwapara Yuga, and finally through Kali Yuga again. So we do the cycle in reverse. It's not as if we go through Kali, Dwapara, Treta, Satya, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're back in Kali Yuga.
Uh-huh.
It's like the waxing and waning of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
The moon doesn't be full one day and then new moon the next. It waxes to its full size and then it diminishes again back to the new moon. So it's a very analogous, very commensurate with this notion that we're getting closer to this center of energy and then receding from it, and the consciousness is therefore, there are matching periods, if you will, of descent on the descending arc to the ascending arc. I think the biggest difference in terms of the kind of footprint it leaves is that the cultures and civilizations and teachings that are expressed in the descending arc tend to revere the past, because there is, up until late in that descending arc, people are aware that they're in a descending arc. They're aware that the consciousness of their forebears was higher than theirs. And so they tend to try to hang on to the wisdom of the past much more carefully and deliberately, and try to, live in that higher consciousness as long as they can. Where in our ascending age, we tend to disparage the past because we're expanding in our awareness and our knowledge and our abilities, and it seems, at least to the preponderance of people today, that the past, certainly the most recent past, has nothing to offer us, nothing to teach us, and so we tend to, just throw it out. So I think that is a broad theme.
I'm sure. One thing that I was thinking is regarding, how people nowadays, or even before, or even in the future, as we go through these stages, these eras, many souls have probably been through lifetimes in other eras, like maybe Satya, Treta, or Dwapara, even Kali, and there is an imprint that we carry on our souls about other ages, and so that is why somehow deep down inside, everybody that's talking about, yes, we're all one, we're all connected, and that kind of thing, is because deep down inside we know that is true, but we don't have access to that information just yet, because we are going through a phase that information is not readily available. So excuse me. I was thinking about the Lord of the Rings, and sort of like an example of what I'm trying to say. Tolkien in the Lord of the Rings, I believe, conveys the characters of the four eras, going from like the elves being, for me, representative of the Satya Yuga, and the orcs being representatives of the Kali Yuga, and there's all the characters or the personalities that in between, and I believe that somehow there's this ingrained in this part of ourselves, in our consciousness, for those souls that have lived other times, this need to express all these things that through what we call science fiction or fiction or mythology, because mythology for me is a clear way of believing the history than the history that is being written and that's been passed. Mythology seems to carry on a truer information of whatever happened before. So do you believe that there's a lot of people or incarnated, a lot of souls incarnated, that know that there is this information from other ages that we carry it inside of us, but we just don't have access to live in that level of awareness at this moment, even though we have lived in those eras or those ages before?
Well, I think there definitely can and would be people alive with us today who have in fact lived in the higher ages, and who are here as perhaps teachers, or perhaps they have some leftover lessons that they can only work out here, even though they've also worked out lessons at the higher levels of consciousness as well. But I tend to think, and this is speculation on my part, that and I very much agree with your feeling about mythology and fantasy and so forth, that it's a deeper than conscious knowledge of man's higher potential that's trying to express itself without really knowing exactly what the truth is, but it's still trying to express this notion that we are so much more, much greater, having much greater potential than we're manifesting now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that comes innately as well.
Yes.
Who we are. We are divine beings.
Mm-hmm.
We're divine beings now because we're doing many things that are divine. We just don't really understand it. You know, the process of thought, being able to manifest and unmanifest things, seems like this, you know, incredibly distant ability.
Mm-hmm.
But we're doing it right now. We just don't know it. Your
Mm-hmm.
body, your health, your degree of prosperity, your relationships are all being determined by the thoughts you hold in your mind right now.
Now, I don't recall that you mentioned in your book anything about Atlantis and Lemuria within being an expression of any part of the Yugas. What do you feel about the existence of Atlantis and Lemuria, or those ancient civilizations that are completely out of the map?
I would love to have included material about Atlantis. I personally believe that there was a advanced civilization that matches what we think of as Atlantis. The problem was my fellow author and I agreed that we didn't want to put anything into the book that didn't have solid corroboration for its existence.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ruled out a lot of intriguing information that is not very supportable by kind of modern standards. And so I had to reluctantly leave Atlantis out, and Lemuria is basically the same. Lemuria, perhaps even older, a cycle before Atlantis, perhaps. But I do think that there were these very, very high civilizations, perhaps in Treta Yuga in the past, that might be candidates for how Atlantis was. I tend to think that such a yuga would not be a time when there is a lot of concentrated building and cities, that mankind's natural attunement to spirit allows them to manifest food, keep themselves healthy, that the sort of material needs that we take for granted today, like food, shelter, etc., would be a non-issue in such a yuga. So I don't think there is much likelihood that these huge, glittering, highly sophisticated in terms of technology kind of civilizations would exist in such a yuga, but they might very well in Treta Yuga, and even in late Dwapara Yuga, in the next 2,000 years. Who knows where Dwapara's innate attunement to energy is going to take us. We may be 2,000 years, we may be seeing the kind of amazing technologies that Edgar Cayce talked about in Atlantis, of this network of crystals, crystals interconnected, beaming energy around the earth. That may be a Dwapara Yuga phenomenon that is yet to come.
Now, in this time of transition that we still feel, I mean, there's so much going on in the planet that brings us despair, that it takes our hope away of living in the peace that we search and the happiness that we're looking for. Is it seems that all the changes of era come with a lot of turmoil. So I was wondering, what do you tell the audience, or what do you suggest to people to hold in this time of transition, to be able to understand and hold when everything around us seems to be going wacko?
It's a really good question. And I think the first answer to that question is to assure people that this is not all there is. That this planet, their circumstances at the moment, are a passing show. It's a show we need to give our hearts to, work to improve, do our best within it, but it's not the only show. When we pass on, we'll go to another show, and we may come back to this show in a later chapter. But this is not the ultimate reality. This is a school. This is where we're learning our lessons, and that we can find peace in our hearts to patiently move through our life's lessons much more easily if we take time to connect to Spirit, if we pray and meditate and tune into Spirit in whatever way we're inspired to do, so that we make a real experiential connection to the greater consciousness of which we are a part.
Well, I really want to, I always have many more questions, but I think we've gone through a quite interesting hour, and I would like to eventually be in contact with you again and with more questions that we can share with the audience. But I really want to really thank you for the time you've given us, and, this sense of having this feeling that there's more, that we're going through a phase that we're here for a reason, and we just need to find out what that reason is for us to be part of the world in this moment, and maybe push the change that we are seeking for in a better way by tuning in to the greater energy source. And so it's been really amazing to have you here, and I hope we are in contact somehow. Maybe I can come visit to your village one day. It really sounds amazing. And pleasure
to have you come and to meet you.
Oh, I'd love to do that. So I'll be in contact through Facebook or wherever. And so thank you so much, Joseph, for such wonderful information that you've shared with us. As I tell you, there's so many pending questions that I want to have. I want to be able to have a longer time with you. Eventually, if we can focus on things that we have not even tapped, like the pyramids of Giza and all the Gelp. What's this southeastern Turkey city that was discovered? Gelp. Exactly, and all those wonderful things that we can go into so much more in depth. So I hope that we eventually can be focused on that kind of thing. But I think what we've gone through today is so important that I really want to thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We'll be in contact then. Until then.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And so this was the interview, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it. We'll be in contact with him to get some more information out there for everybody to start waking up and continue this process in this world right now. Thank you.